where you will find information and resources related to Farm to School, including links to Farm to School contacts in all 50 states. And that's the page that you're seeing now. We have state leads and regional leads across the country. So if you're new to Farm to School or have questions about food safety issues, local policy, or anything else, feel free to contact your state lead after the webinar today. While you're on the website, you can also join our network and sign up for email newsletters, which will let you know about future webinars and other upcoming events. Our next webinar is Building Community Capacity, Local, Regional, and National Collaborations for Farm to School, and that will be taking place on December 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Today's webinar, however, is How Farm to School Supports the Adoption of Healthy Nutrition Standards, and I'm really excited to be visiting about that today with Betti Wiggins, who's on the line with us and will join us here in just a second. Betti is the Executive Director at the Office of School Nutrition for Detroit Public Schools, and she's also a member of the National Farm to School Network's Advisory Board. And she will be joining us here in just a second. So I want to just take a second to give a little bit of an introduction to the topic. And the topic today, as I said, is Farm to School Tool for Success with Nutrition Standards. And Betti and I are going to be having a dialogue about that. I'm seeing a little bit of notice that the slides aren't advancing correctly. So I promise if you're having trouble seeing the slides, we'll get that fixed here in just a minute before we begin the presentation. So just to give a little bit of background information, a lot of schools that you've probably heard a lot in the last couple years about the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010 and the nutrition standards that it ushered in. A lot of schools across the country have been working to figure out how to add more fruits and vegetables to their menus, as well as items like whole grains per those nutrition standards. But some schools have reported dealing with increased plate waste and decreased participation. However, other schools have reported that farm to school practices specifically have been a great tool in helping them deal with the adjustment to nutrition standards. We all know that change can be tricky in all aspects of life, and particularly when you're talking about getting kids to try new foods. Farm to school practices can include things like school gardens, taste tests to acquaint kids with new foods slowly and to make the process more fun, as well as food and nutrition education, including things like food field trips, having food education integrated into other classroom activities, and other things that help slowly introduce students to the idea of new foods that they'll be seeing on their cafeteria tray. So Betti has a lot of experience in this in Detroit and has seen a lot of great success. So without further ado, I'd like to start that conversation and let Betti tell you a little bit more about her work in Detroit. So Betti, first of all, maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us how long you've been working in food service there in Detroit, how long you've been the director of their program.
Hi, I've been in Detroit since 2008. At first, originally I came to Detroit in 2000, and the job was promptly outsourced to a management company for 8 years. And then in 2008, I wrote the proposal to bring it back in-house. So I operated as operations manager for 2 years, and in 2010, I was appointed the executive director. That was about the same time that I became very interested in buying local. That was part of a regional effort by the CS Mott Food Center, focusing on farm to school projects. So we became interested in 2009, actively engaged by 2010 in the two component parts of farm to school, which is buying local and increasing access to fresh fruits and vegetables to children. And we just started in 2009 establishing new menu standards, new dietary standards, not, saying we were going to serve more fresh fruits and vegetables. We cut off the deep fat fryers. We started no salt cooking. We changed our menu to add meatless meals. We had just had a 10-point program. And the childhood obesity, Journal of Childhood Obesity printed our 10-point program. And so we just used that as our guiding principles, that we were going to increase access to fresh fruits and vegetables to our children.
That's wonderful. And Betti, when did you started working towards these goals before the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act came around, right?
Yes.
And
Yes. Any success that we are having now is based on the fact that this has been since 2009. This wasn't just 2010 we started. I read the article from the Institute of Medicine and knew there was, something afoot, as they would say, about changing nutrition standards. I've been an active member of the School Nutrition Association since 1989, and they have always been concerned about how do we improve the nutrition standards, how do we ensure that good quality food is getting to our kids. So when I read the article from the IOM, Institute of Medicine, I said, this is going to happen. So we should now start using this as a guiding, helping us establish our guiding principles. And that's how we came up with our 10-point plan.
that's awesome. And tell me a little bit more about that 10-point plan. What were some of the
Our
key
10-point plan was basically 10 principles. It was increasing fresh fruits and vegetables, eliminating deep fried fryers, making sure all children had breakfast. It's all so much part of my culture, and I can't remember all 10. No added salt. No, like I said, deep fat frying. Healthy snacks. I can't remember them all, but I'll be more than glad to forward them to you. I know they're in the Gail Christopher published those in an editorial for the Journal of Childhood Nutrition. Childhood obesity.
That's great, Betti. I'm going to pause just one second. Betti, I'm seeing some reports from some of our attendees today that they're not seeing the slides advance, and they definitely are on my end. So I'm going to try one more time to see if I can put this in presentation mode. Betti, are you seeing the slides on your screen?
Yes, I'm seeing the slides, but they're not moving.
Gotcha. Okay. I apologize, folks. I want you to all be able to see these photos from Betti's school. That's not right.
Children. You want some more? Want me to get you a taco salad like that?
Okay. I'm just going to advance to where we were in the slides, and we're going to keep going because I don't want to interrupt this conversation. Hopefully the slides will start working now. And if anybody can give me any feedback, if they can see a picture of Betti's lunch line now, that would be great.
I see the lunch line.
Okay, you see the girl choosing the apple?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll hope that it's working for everybody else then. And I apologize for the interruption. I think I'm getting a little bit of mixed feedback. I think it's working for some, but not others. So we're gonna charge ahead. But speaking of this lunch line, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what we're seeing here. Looks like children have the option to choose between several fresh fruit and vegetable items.
Well, given my production method here in Detroit, we have something that's called a heat and serve method. We use minimally processed foods in the center of our plate, and the way that the items that we bring into temperature will either be baked or steamed, or we're going to give it to you raw. So when you start looking at my kitchens, you'll see convection ovens and steamers, or we'll, make a makeshift steamer by, putting things in water and boiling them. So one of the most effective ways of getting kids to eat fruits and vegetables is serving them raw. So the first tray you see, where you see the plastic, you'll see something red and yellow and green. Well, that's our stoplight salad. That product was raised in a school garden. We have 76 gardens, and each school is given 6 garden beds. In 3 of those garden beds, you have to raise zucchini, which is green, yellow squash, which, summer squash, yellow, and a tomato, which is red. those, through the lessons that the teachers have, those kids go out into the garden, and I have to tell you right now, it's basically KH that are doing this effectively, and they'll pick those items, bring them into the cafeteria, and our ladies will wash them up and slice them up and make a stop light salad, green, yellow, and red. And I have to give Teresa Ramirez, who is my deputy executive, who came up with this. And so that gives them a chance to participate in the lunch line. The apples are mainly Michigan apples. If we can't get Michigan apples, we go regionally to Ohio, and then we go out into to the wider market. And then the salad, we long since have changed our salad mix. And since this photo was taken, we've changed it again to something we call a Detroit mix. And we don't serve iceberg lettuce. So if you go along that line, you're going to see the opportunity for the kids. Every day we serve a salad. Every day we serve a salad. And then we'll either have a fresh fruit or a raw vegetable. And then the hot item can either be a meatless item or, a full muscle meat, chicken nugget. So we don't serve hot dogs and we don't serve pizza every day. So we basically have the expectation our kids have now is that they'll get an apple. One of the things you can be guaranteed of in Michigan, you're going to get an apple. You can get an apple or you're going to get a pear. Pear season just passed. We had pears. They don't last very long in Michigan. But apples and carrot sticks. And those kind of items. And what we told our children is if you don't eat it now, put it in your book bag, you can eat it later. And, of course, we do have the typical share tables and stuff where, kids decide they want an extra piece of fruit, they're welcome to it. On Food Day, we had the most exciting time that I've had in a long time, because we were able to buy locally potatoes that were raised in Kalkaska, Michigan, and apples, Jonathan apples, that came out of Grand Rapids. And an antibiotic-free chicken legs that the closest we could get was Missouri, but that's okay. But that was Food Day, and that celebration happened in 6 states across the United States. So, it's a real, what I'm finding is that when we start partnering and start collaborating with one another, we can put more local food on our trays, and also we teach one another, and we can start learning how to meet the standards. Plate waste, I keep hearing about plate waste. Now, remember, this has been a 5-year journey, but I'm telling you, not trying to get too sophisticated, not trying to give it some sort of cooked product. Like with the high school kids, the way we introduced asparagus, we just steamed it and gave them some ranch dressing. Not before, so we're going to enter our 5th year serving asparagus. And so we do with it sometimes with the high school kids. We chop it up and put it into mixed salads. My kids love entree salads, where we're using boiled eggs and all sorts of things as a protein. So that's a big item in our, and they finally got used to the new lettuce mix, which is a different than what it was for iceberg lettuce.
And when you say they finally got used to it, about how long did that take? And what were was there anything special you did to help encourage that transition between the old and the new lettuce mix?
One of the things that happened is in my K-8 schools that do not happen very often, I think, around the country, people started offering a lot of variety and selection. What I focused on was providing my kids with a meal. So typically what you see is they have some choices of some fruits and vegetables, but we just put it on their plate, and they're learning how to eat those things. So it takes constantly put it in before them. So now we've been doing this for about 4 years. Now we have some 4th graders that are 8th graders, and they're used to seeing things on their trays. They're used to seeing stoplight salads. They're used to seeing Michigan apples. They're used to seeing cooked potatoes or baked potatoes. They're used to having meatless Monday. So no one gets upset if they don't have meat on Monday. And while it was challenging, they're used to seeing, peaches, Michigan peaches, or blueberries mixed in with a fruit cocktail. So it's just, And then and the plate waste now we're finding is the middle of the plate. Because yesterday I was with some kids, had carrot sticks, had baby carrots, and we taught them how to open up the packets and put little low-fat ranch dressing on it, and they were shaking them up, and they were really excited about having it. So it just keep coming at us.
And when you're serving these local products, do you have signage or something else that's advertising that they're local, that it's part of Farm to School?
We started putting that on our menu of where they come from through the local grower. And then we're also the benefactor of a fresh fruit and vegetable program. And what we try to do with that program is to make sure we use your local stuff. And there's a big nutrition aid component with that. So in probably 57 of my 87 K-8 schools, I have fresh fruit and vegetables. But we're starting to work on a program and working with different agencies. I work with the Eastern Market to try to get that information out and, highlighting our farmers on our menu.
And explain to me a little bit more about why you think that's important, highlighting the farmers and the local farms.
Because it creates a sense of community. When you can bring rural Michigan into urban Detroit, and you can see a relationship, and people can start to feel as if we're all part of a community food system, and not just a big white truck or 18-wheeler dropping food off at one of our back doors. It makes people realize that my food was grown here in my home state, and I know the farmer that grew it. So I just think it creates a whole community system, a whole community food system.
Well, I definitely agree. And tell me now, we're looking at a picture now of some of the school gardens in Detroit schools. And tell me a little bit more about the garden program. How many of the schools have gardens? How much are the kids able to interact, and maybe what impact does that have, you think, on the school food service?
The school garden program is a beneficiary of the Healthy and Hunger Free Act of 2010, because Cindy Long put out some guidance that says you can establish and maintain school gardens with some very specific rules about what you can and cannot do. So what we did was back in 2011, we started with school gardens. We now have 76 gardens. We have 76 schools with gardens of 6 beds each. We did that in terms of under the banner of increasing access to healthy foods and also to support a STEM education. We use that to engage the community and as well as the teachers. We provide the teachers with support in that we have what we call a garden attendant, that they work seasonally from April 15th to October 15th, and they go into the schools and they will tell the teacher, how can I help you out in your garden today? So if she wants some buckets out there, she needs some stuff watered. And then over the summer months, when the kids are out for summer school, these garden attendants go around roving, taking care of these gardens that the kids have planted between April and, we get out of school June 13th. So that's when the gardens start harvesting in the summertime. And hopefully a little bit when they come back in September. And we have sort of like created a TSA. That the rules say that we can give the food away. So we give the food away to the community, and in return, the community watch our gardens. None of my school gardens have fence around them. They're not behind a fence that the neighborhood cannot access, because the school gardens are pretty much a part of the community.
And what impact have you seen the gardens having on kids' willingness to try new foods when they get into the cafeteria?
The impact I say is not only when they're putting the seedlings into their garden beds, some of them are taking them home, growing them in their backyards. So they have a real sense of how to grow. Last summer, we had 65 middle schoolers who got their junior master gardeners certifications. And not only did they work in their school gardens, they also had little, 1 or 2 plants or whatever at home. So we keep seeing them have some interest and involvement in growing their own food and recognizing what they're growing. And then we have the audacity to grow only heirlooms.
That's fantastic. And they certainly look like beautiful gardens. They look really nice. So, Betty, I think we're going to stop and take a couple questions from our attendees, and just continue the conversation that way. I also want to launch a poll, just to find out from our attendees whether or not they've taken part in one of our webinars before. So, if you're listening to the webinar right now, if you could just take a second to answer this poll question, it would be much appreciated. And apologies for the technical difficulties seeing the slides today. Hopefully this poll is launching. There we go. So we'll just pause just a second here. I'll go ahead and launch while everyone's answering this poll. I'll go ahead and ask you the first question that's come in from one of our attendees, Betty. Do you have a countywide policy for your school gardens? For example, is it required that you have organic soil, compost, and seeds? Are there rules that apply to the entire county? And this person's asking because currently their county does not allow schools to use food from the school gardens.
Okay, we have, I can't speak for the whole county of Wayne, but I do speak for the Detroit Public School System and all of the schools I serve. Not only do I serve Detroit Public School System, but I have 35 charter schools, and I even have schools out county in Oakland County. We have a policy about soil. That's the only thing that we have. We also, and our soil says that it's 300, because we're an industrial city, we have to test all our soil. So to not have a problem, as you can see, I use raised garden beds. So that's a concern we have. We also have a food safety policy. So all the teachers and all the garden attendants have to have gone through food safety training. But other than that, we don't have any other rules that forbid us, even out Wayne County, even in the state of Michigan, that I know of, that forbids us from using food for Harvest in the Garden in our school meals program.
And here's another question that's a good one. Betty, how have you been able to source the local apples and other veggies while staying within your budget? Do you have a great enough participation that makes up for any increase in sourcing price?
Well, we started out by engaging the Eastern Market. The Eastern Market is where our farmers meet, sell their produce on Saturdays in the summertime and a couple times during the week. So we started there, and I also use my broadline distributor. I said to my broadline distributor, I want local. Many broadline distributors now have a robust local purchasing program. If an item comes in too high, I would then adjust my menu to bring it into line with my food cost. That's one of the things that they hire us for, is to be able to adjust our menus and figure out our food costs and provide our customers with what they need. You just can't say, oh, this is too high and I'm not going to do it. We got to look at that whole menu, because a menu is a plan. It's not one day at a time. You look at that whole plan and see, how do you fit these items in? Do I serve local every day? Absolutely not. Because you're right, it may be a higher price. But a local apple does not cost me any more than an apple that comes out the terminal. And when my farmers know that I'm out there buying, they know there's a source to sell their product. One of the things we're talking about here in Detroit now with some of our farmers is that I will not have to buy tray packs. I can buy loose packs. We're looking at some apples you can't buy loose packs because they bruise easily, but there are some you can. Then I have to be, aware of certain apples I can't use in my program because they're too hard for the smaller kids. But there are some we can use. We look at USDA products in terms of the fresh fruits and vegetable program. So there's different ways that, you have to be engaged in this. You just don't say, oh, I'm going to serve local and just plop it down. You look at your whole menu pattern and say, if this item's going to cost me a dime more, what other days can I adjust so I can get that local item on my menu?
Mm-hmm.
or So I mean, you have to be savvy as a food service person.
And how many meals are you serving per day?
85,000.
Wow. And what's your percentage of free and reduced meals in your district?
So I'm 100% free because I was part of the CEO, which is now CEP, Community Eligibility Provision, and 100% of my schools qualified. Not that they all, but I had the factor when you took my direct cert level of 65% and multiplied it by a factor of 146, my whole district became eligible.
What impact?
And
go ahead.
As well as my charter schools.
What impact has that had on your participation, your ability to participate in that, and what has that had on your school meal participation?
In the high schools, participation went up at least 30% because no longer was there avert identification. And I'm going to tell you something else that really helped me. People have been talking about smart snacks. Since I had to curtail my a la carte program and I wasn't selling all of that, competitive food, I had a high school where participation went up 30% over last year when I did have that, competitive food program. So I saw participation really go up in high schools. And then we are also doing great things with, because our state is very supportive of breakfast in the classroom and grab-and-go breakfast. My breakfast participation in some of my high schools went from like 5% to 60%. So I've had great results as being part of implementing that, a healthy and hunger-free new nutrition standards. I can't complain at all.
That's fantastic. And what would your advice be to other school nutrition directors and schools that are maybe struggling a little bit with the standards? What would your advice be, and how would you explain to them why farm to school has been important to your strategy?
I think farm to school, when we look at it, it really, the child nutrition menu standards are prescriptive, and we might as well accept that they're designed in a way to decrease the incidence of childhood obesity. Farm to school is just it's a method, it's a program that gives you some guiding, it's a principle. We need to incorporate more fresh fruits and vegetables. We need to educate. So not only is it, I think I look at farm to school as a more education program that provide us with the resources that we need to start implementing. And people shouldn't be afraid of that. People should, I think it's because of the farm to school program and all the guidance I got and all the support I got that we've been so successful. It's not like you're out in this wilderness all by yourself. And then you turn to yourself as a food service person and say, okay, do I really believe that I really sincerely believe that my kids deserve fresh fruits and vegetables. I really believe that if I don't start teaching them in school, I'm going to be part of that grand conspiracy that create all these fat adults. Mm-hmm. So it's about education. And my kids, when they're learning and what they see on their trays, they take home. I was in a market where a child asked her mother for a tomato so she could make salsa. And this was an African-American community. I was like, wait a minute. She had salsa at school. We make salsa at school. And I asked her what school. She said, yeah, I really like it. And she told me what school she went to. So the impact of fresh fruits and vegetables, the impact of working collaboratively across state lines, and all this under the guise of farm to school to make sure that we implement these new standards, it's been really easy. And the state, and like I said, to be faithful to it. I'm not saying it's easy because I have colleagues out there who do have lower free and reduced rates, but you've already gauged your program to what your free and reduced rate is, and you know what you have to do and what you need to serve. So I don't want to be smart about this, but I think that we really can do it if we embrace that the child nutrition program is prescriptive. We as school food service directors have a responsibility to turn our cafeterias into like laboratories where kids can learn about good food and about the importance of eating fruits and vegetables. So the garden program supports that, as well as my local procurement, because local procurement makes it seem like it's a community effort. When I can help a farmer that lives 140 miles and lives up in the cold tundra of the UP, and he sends me potatoes, and he's sending them to Detroit, it becomes a community effort. So that great divide is even shorter now, or eliminated.
That's
Is that what you?
That's
Huh?
that is more than what I wanted, Betty. That's fantastic. This whole conversation's been fantastic, and I think we're going to move towards wrapping up here in just a second. But I want to ask our attendees to give us just a little bit more feedback about how they found the webinar today. And but this has really been a great conversation, and I'm really grateful that you were able to come and take the time here to share with us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I just think that, I'm very grateful to be part of the Farm to School Network. And I think that the work we're doing with our colleagues and the way we're organizing around the country is that we really are changing the food system, because that's what it's really about. Not just about the items that are on kids' trays, but the food system in itself.
Right, I totally agree. I think Farm to School has the ability to have one of the largest impacts on our food system of anything out there. I think you couldn't be more right. Well, again, I just want to thank you, Betty, for your time today. This has been extremely informative. I want to apologize to everyone who did have technical problems. I tried to change up the slide format a little bit a couple times so some of you could see these great photos. If you have any questions, please send me an email, chelsea@farmtoschool.org. Hopefully you are seeing that on your screen, but I'll just repeat it again in case you're not, chelsea@farmtoschool.org. And this webinar was recorded, so you'll be able to listen to that recording later on our website. And just want to thank everyone again, and especially you, Betty, for taking the time to have this conversation. So thanks.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And hope everyone join us for our future webinar.